Here we are, the ding. We're driving it home. I have a very special guest on today, a true professor. So it's like the double driving it home with the professor today. I have a Professor Chris Savarese. If you know Professor, you will know him as Professor Sav. You know, there's very few people in the world like Pele, Zulu, Michael. You know who we're talking about when we say Sav. Probably one of the most well-connected Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school owners in the United States. Coach to many fine competitors. I know he's coached guys at ADCC, all this other stuff. Received his black belt from Hoyler Gracie. Has trained as well as receiving his black belt from Hoyler. Has trained at the Renzo Gracie Academy. So he's been at the foot and at the instruction of some very fine, or arguably some of the best instructors in the world. So I introduce you Professor Chris Savarese, or as I like to call him, Sav. Anything I missed or anything that's important that people should know about you?
What's up, guys? Yeah, I got to train. I was lucky in my journey. I trained with, under some of the best instructors in the world. So, and now right now I'm in the Rafael Lovato Junior Association. Okay, I'm a second-degree black belt under him. So I just continue, to train with the best guys that I can.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm arguably one of the best Americans to ever compete at black belt, ADCC, Rafael Lovato, out of Oklahoma. So, again, being with some top people. So, Sav, all of your friends that might not have been in contact with you lately or following you on Facebook, we know you recently had a little bit of a health scare. And what exactly happened? What's going on? How's your health now? And what's the future hold for you?
Okay, first thing I want to say is it was really amazing, all the messages I got from people in the jiu-jitsu community while I was going through this. For the people who don't know, I have diabetes, and I just recently had a quintuple bypass, and I had open heart surgery. Came from basically complications from my diabetes, and it all happened very quickly. I was having another surgery on my elbow, and I failed my stress test, and within it, they wanted to do a cardiocardiogram, which basically is going to check my arteries, and when they did that, they found 5 blockages. I was 90% occluded, which they basically told me if they didn't catch it, I was very lucky. I would have had a heart attack and basically died like within 2 months. So it happened very quickly. Like when they found it, they actually did the surgery the next day, and afterwards, I mean, there was just an outpouring of messages and texts, and even people I've had falling out with, like over, some people. I heard from so many people, and it really was uplifting after that, because when you go through something like that, like, you honestly don't know if you're coming out of it on the other side, And when I saw some of the messages from people, they really were uplifting at, definitely the worst time of my life. So I just would love to thank the jiu-jitsu community for the outpouring of very, very heartfelt messages. It was really, really awesome. Thank you very much. But to answer your question, I'm doing much better now. I'm in rehab 4 times a week. I have about another 2.5 months to go. I'm at my academy every day, but I'm not physically teaching yet. I'm still healing. My chest is still healing. I'm itchy like crazy. Like I can't wait to start training again. It's driving me absolutely insane. It's funny, as we get older, you kind of take it down a notch. You don't train as much, and now that I actually can't, I feel like it's been taken away from me. I'm losing my mind. I can't wait to get back on the mat and train. It's just it's been a rough couple of months, but they're looking up. They're looking up. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
No problem. Now let's get back to kind of when you got the diagnosis, and I could assume that it's a scary thing, because you're how old are you, Sav? You're 40.
I'm 47.
You're 47 years old. I mean, way too soon for you to leave this earth, for sure. But what kinds of things went through your head when the doctors were saying, "Hey, man, you might not wake up"? You know what I'm saying? And
Well,
how did you kind of deal with, like, you know, was it your martial arts training that you leaned on and all that other stuff to kind of get you through it, or, you know, what helped you get through it?
no, it's very emotional. For me, it was kind of weird because I didn't expect this to happen. You know, when I did the cardio cat, even that morning, my doctor had told me, you know, a lot of times with diabetics, you get false positives. He told me to keep myself on track for the surgery I was having. And when I woke up from the cardio cat, my mom, my sister, and my girlfriend were all crying in my room. So, like, I knew something was wrong. So when the doctor came in, the first thing I thought about was, oh my God, I'm never going to do jiu-jitsu again. Like, the thought of dying didn't even enter my head until, you know, until like a little later on. And definitely, I can tell you, the next morning, the morning of the surgery is definitely like the most emotional you ever be in your life. Like I said, you start to think about, like, you know, all the things you might miss out on and stuff like that. It was a real emotional time.
And you know, and you and I have a very tight personal relationship, so I can, you know, you don't have children, but you have your nieces and your nephews that you're very close to, so that had to kind of weigh on you a bit, I'd imagine.
It did. You know, and even, like, you know, just some unfinished business you have in your life with, like, certain things, like, you own a school, like we have, you know, there's life work that, like, you know, we're still working on. And not just that, you know, there were some relationships that, like, you know, say weren't going so well, you know, like friendships or whatever and stuff that you didn't get that chance to, like, you know, kind of like make things right with, you know, and you know, it wound up happening afterwards. Like, I even had some training partners, like some very close training partners that I had, you know, kind of lost touch with over, like, you know, you look back at it now, stupid stuff, you know, that, like, you know, we've spoken afterwards. You know, they called me and, like, you know, I was happy to hear from them, or they sent me messages and then I called them, you know, when I got back into the swing of things, and, like, you know, we straightened out a lot of, like, stupid things, you know, like, that's the stuff you take, you know, the biggest thing I could say that I've taken out of this is, you know, not to sound like an old person, but, like, when the generation before us would tell us, oh, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. It's so true. Like, if you could have all the money, all the nicest things, like, not for nothing, my life is pretty good, you know, and you know, I love my life, you know, and the fact that, like, I almost lost it, like, you know, you take a lot of things out of it, and the first one is, like, you know, not to, like, get caught up in, like, that stupid, you know, these stupid arguments about stuff that really has no meaning, you know, and letting it take a lot of, you know, like, a lot of energy from you.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, kind of having a health scare like this, or somebody in your family having a health scare, it really makes you realize, like you're saying, what's important and what's not important. And it sounds like you kind of, you know, you're making peace with people that maybe you didn't make peace with before, because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're dealing with this major heart issue, not some BS problem that you might have had with a referee at some tournament or something like that.
Or an argument over two kids, and, you know, one kid's not in the right division and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, look, we could poke fun at people over the internet about that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, you know, we got to realize, right, as men and as human beings, there's real problems out there, and
Right.
and you know, you were thankfully you're coming out on the good side of a real problem. Now, you said your arteries were 90% blocked, right? How did you function at a high level as a jiu-jitsu instructor, number one? And number two, and I know this, that you're a jiu-jitsu instructor that trains with his students, you're a jiu-jitsu instructor that teaches his beginner classes. Like, how did you not feel what was going on with your heart? Like, how your heart's basically working at 10% of its capacity.
You sound like all the doctors. They were all asking the same thing. Like, honestly, I don't know. I just honestly thought that my allergies were kicking my ass. You know, it was a bad allergy season, and that's what I thought it was. Looking back now, I can see there were some things. Like, there was a day you know, one day I was training with Sean, my assistant instructor, in the morning, and I was just unbelievably tired. I just thought, I didn't get a lot of sleep. These allergies are killing me, because we have a big door. Like, we have a loading dock at the school, and sometimes we open up the door to get you know, some more air in. So I thought, like, yeah, maybe we need to shut the door. Another day, Rafael Lovato was in town. We were training, and like, I got, like, all of a sudden, like, everything up was down and everything down was up. I didn't know if I got, like, a slight case of vertigo, or if he kneed me in the head by accident. Maybe I was concussed. and I didn't know. But I mean, him and my friend called Savar had to kind of hold me up for a second. Like I couldn't get my feet out from under me. Like another day I was at a Yankees game and like I was having like some trouble breathing again. We were sitting like right in the field. I thought maybe the grass, my allergies. So I don't know how I was doing all those things, but now the way I feel now, I have so much more energy. Like I can see that there was something wrong before, but I don't. It's an unbelievable. I don't have an answer for you. Like I don't know how I was doing anything.
Well, thank God you didn't have kind of like a massive heart attack while you were training with somebody, because that would be awkward for everybody involved.
Yeah, right. There was a guy that they used to call Sav. I don't know if you remember him. He competed in the first couple of ADCCs. He was a Russian guy, Savko. He had some wars with Salo and stuff like that, but that's actually how he passed away.
Yeah. That's right. You're right. Yeah, wasn't he like an instructor at an ADCC, or he lived out there and that kind of stuff?
For a while, I don't remember. He was a real tough guy, short, squat guy, bald guy, but he had some high finishes. I think he might have finished second a couple of times, but he was a beast. And that's actually how he passed away, right on the mat.
We'd rather that not happen. Let's hopefully if you're 85 and then you die training with somebody, that'd be okay, but not at 47.
Yes.
So you were training, your heart's at 10% capacity. The doctors, they don't know, but I mean, I guess a lot of it has to do with, like you've been training for how many years?
I started in 94.
94. So 20. You're coming up on your 20-year anniversary, right? I know these things about you, but you were an athlete, high school, college. You know what I'm saying? You've been training jiu-jitsu for 20 years, so you have to attribute a lot of that to just your innate physical ability, but secondly, the mental toughness that the martial arts helps you develop, right? I mean, that would have to. That would be my answer.
Pretty sure, yeah. I'm just not, like we teach a no excuses philosophy, and it's really how I live my life. Like, I just don't put up with it with not just in my academy, like, outside of the academy, like, people in my life, like those people who are constant complainers, I just eliminate them. Like, and I teach that, so I feel like I have to live it. I'm just not a guy who complains about a lot of things. Like, if I complain, it's about stupid stuff, not about, like to make excuses of why I can't do things.
Yeah, my heart's 90% block, guys. Don't worry about it. I'm going to train anyway. Yeah. So speaking of training, and it's something that you haven't been able to do since your surgery, but kind of, like for the people that might come across this show that have never done jiu-jitsu or any kind of martial arts, like, can you explain to them what's missing from your life right now? Like, what are the things that, for you, even at a black belt level, the highest level that you could really attain, a school owner, having students, like, why do you miss it even after 20 years?
Well, it's my life. We've spent a good part of our lives, like, creating something, and now, like, listen, my school's to the point now where I've been open for a while, and it's a pretty successful school, so it kind of runs without me. But I missed, I miss teaching the new people probably the most, because those are the people who were like generally the most excited about it. And I could still like tweak like some of my upper belts, like when they're doing something wrong, I could tell them, but I can't physically get down on the mat and like show them. And just the training, you know me a long time. I've always my weight's always gone up and down. So like now I really got to keep my diet in check, to keep my weight down. And by not being able to do like anything physical, jiu-jitsu has always been a way for me to keep my weight in check. And but just the general love, I love jiu-jitsu, like and I love training, and not being able to do it, like I said, has had quite an effect on me. And I've even spoken to some people like who have actually had the same thing happen to them, and to like pick their brain about like what am I looking at when I come back to training, like what was it like in the beginning and stuff like that, because I'm sure there's things I'm going to have to change, like even about my training, like for a while, like I'm not as physically strong. Like even in rehab now, I could see like a lot of pushing movements. I've lost a lot of strength. My strength is slowly coming back. Pulling movements, I seem to be like getting back to where I was, but pushing movements, because my chest is still tight and healing, and like I don't really have any muscles in my chest right now. Like like I'm trying to build them back up. Like, there was so much atrophy from the surgery. I'm still trying to build that up. Like I can tell you something that just recently happened to me. My nephew is quite an athlete for his age, even at 9 years old. So I was at one of his basketball games, and before the game, I was just rebounding for him, passing it back to me. So I went to take a couple of shots. Now, actually, in high school, I was a very good basketball player, and I'm trying to shoot a basketball. I can't even reach the rim.
So everybody gets some context because they don't know. How tall are you?
I'm 5'6".
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. So that ball's got to travel a decent amount from your hands to reach the rim.
Yeah, but I couldn't reach the rim, and it was it really messed with me. I remember that even the next day I went into rehab. I was telling the trainer, it's just not something you take things for granted. Excuse me. You take things for granted, like things that you do every day that. I actually have a basketball court in my pool, so I play basketball all the time, and for me to not be able to do that, it was just like, wow, I really it really affected me mentally, and and it's funny. I even use little things like that now. Like I went to rehab, and after a couple of days, and they changed my workout at rehab and stuff. You could bet your bottom dollar I was right back 3 days later, shooting basketball to make sure I could hit the rim, because I just can't deal with that. So it's the things that everyday things that you think nothing of. You're like a baby. You have to relearn everything.
Right, and what people fail to realize is that you're not the normal case, right? I mean, people that do what we do for the amount of time that we've done it aren't quitters, aren't people that give up and they have this major surgery. Like the first question you had was, when am I going to be able to train again, or will I be able to train again? It wasn't, am I going to survive this? It's no, am I going to survive this, and when can I get back on the mats? And that's, you know what I'm saying? That's quote unquote not normal, but that's good in my eyes.
I'll take it one step further, Marco. Not to sound like an ungrateful person, but even when I was in the hospital after the surgery, most of the people who come to visit you feel sorry for you, and that's so not me. I don't want to hear, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to you. As soon as the surgery was done and I lived, I was already on to, when do I start rehab? I was in that mindset already. I'm ready to get back to where I was and start the process of healing, getting back and rehabbing and stuff like that. And even people in my family, they're coming to see you, and they feel sorry for you, and they want to talk about how horrible it. And I'm just not that dude. I think people who do what we do and do it on a high level to get to where we had to be, we have a much different mindset, as you were talking about before, than other people. And even some of my students, it was hard. I didn't really want to see a lot of people, because I was already into the next part where people didn't get to that part with me yet. They were still in the they couldn't believe that happened to me, and
right.
They almost
and you'd already moved on.
Right.
No, and people, and people need to realize that if you look at martial arts training as simply a physical endeavor, you're probably just better off doing CrossFit and throwing kettlebells and medicine balls around. You know what I'm saying? But we've taken, I know through my experience, and the things that have gone on in my life, and through what you got going on right now, I know part of the reason we're able to get through a lot of the stresses and BS parts of our life is because of the training, of the people we've, you said earlier, the people that came around you, and just kind of just what the martial arts, all the good in the martial arts really helps you at those moments that you're at your darkest, or when you're at your worst. And people that don't do martial arts fail to realize that time and time again. And and I know this happens to you all the time, somebody walks out and they're like, yeah, I want to be able to defend myself, and they leave. I'm like, well, how did you improve on being able to defend yourself by not taking your first class, or being a more confident person, and that kind of thing? So
exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We see it every day. How many times in the course of you had your school have people come in and not joined? They'll come in and they'll talk like this great game, and then they won't join over the price, or, oh, I can't make that schedule work. You know, I mean, I actually have subliminal messages all over my office. Like, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If not, you find an excuse. Like, you know, like we have all of these things basically letting people know that, like, listen, I'm not here to listen to your excuses. Like, you got to make it happen. If you really, truly want to do it, you can do it. And
Right.
I'm
No,
here.
and I know one of the best lines that you've ever told me is when are you here to try it or are you here to do it? You know what I'm
That's
saying?
it.
Because if you're here to do it, then you're at the right place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So now that you're old enough to have heart attacks, right? And but you know, all jokes aside, we know, you know, you and I came up in an era, and I just got a video today of a challenge match, the very first challenge match I ever witnessed. It was great. Somebody sent me a clip of it, and I hadn't seen it in 15 years. But let's get into kind of the old school, right? And what is that? You know, when you hear that term, because people throw that around, right? You know, what does that mean to you, and what do you think constitutes being an old school guy when it comes to jiu-jitsu, martial arts, MMA?
Well, I think guys who came up, see, the new school guys hate to hear this, but it was much rougher when we came up. Like, you know, there's just no bones about it. And, you know, I hate even talking about it sometimes because then they'll, like, the younger generation, like the newer blue belts now, you know, they kind of think like we're an asshole, like, oh, we're better than them. And that's not what we're saying. Listen, I remember one of the first jiu-jitsu classes I ever took. I went down to Renzo Gracie Academy, and they threw me in the first day. And, like, you know, the guys I trained with, I think I trained with like a 16-year-old Danny Ives. Now, when I came in, you know, you were talking about my athletic background before. I mean, I played baseball in college. Like, I lettered in 3 sports in high school. Like, I was a pretty good athlete. And at the time, I was actually a powerlifting champion. Like, I was competing in powerlifting tournaments and stuff. So I walked in there, like, you know, with my athleticism, I thought I was going to be good right away. Danny Ives, I think, was like 16 years old, and he was my first partner. He beat the shit out of me because in those days you did train on your first day. And then after that, I went with this guy Gene Dunn, who's like a 3rd-degree black belt on the Renzo now, and is still one of the toughest dudes there. And he beat the hell out of me. Like, I just basically got beat up by like 5 guys. But for me, I went home and like, I got to do this. I got to do this. And I was living in New Jersey at the time, and I wound up. I had gone to a seminar in Atlantic City before that, and I had met David Deave, and he had given me his card, and so I went to train with him after that. So, you know, when people who are old school, we just came up at a different time when it was much rougher. Like, you know, my guys now, they joined my school, and like I have like their whole first year like mapped out for them. Like, you know, what you need to learn. They're given sheets of like what they need to learn, quizzes. Like, there's so much to help them. Us, we were just thrown into like you know into like a pit with like killers, and like, you know, if you were tough enough to come out, you did.
Right, it was like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, you know, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
But what I will say, if you look at like all the great schools across the country now that came from that generation, like you talked about before, I trained at Renzo Gracie's for a long time, and we were at a table. I remember it was Renzo, me, my friend Carl Massaro. This was at Jamal Patterson's wedding, and we made a list of all the people from the first school who had their own academies now, and we actually stopped at 30. Like, we had written 30 people down on a piece of paper, and it's some of the best schools across the country now, and it was all from this one room. Even the first room that you trained in, how many guys from that room have their own schools? Like, off the top of my head, you, Jared, Phil and Rick, you know, Brad,
Tim Carpenter.
Carpenter. I mean, you know, these were like, this was a really good school where a lot of the best schools on the East Coast now came from, you know, started in this one room. You know, so like, I don't really think a lot of the schools now are going to produce schools like that. Like I just don't. So like when I hear old school, I think we just came up in a different era. There's a different toughness about the guys who came from that area, and they definitely are like no excuses type guys. And a lot of us, our roots come from the self-defense side. You know, and you know, we weren't so much in a lot. There were a lot of good competitors that came out of the, like, you know, a lot of the schools from the old school, but you know, we were rooted in like I heard you say it in your one with Brad Court. You guys were talking about it for a while. How you know, a lot of us trained with punches. A lot of us, you know all the self-defense, and I don't think a lot of the new school guys do that. A lot of them, you guys were talking about how jiu-jitsu guys now are training to beat other jiu-jitsu guys. And, the guys who came from the old school guys, we were training how to win a street fight, how to beat other martial
artists. Yeah. No, well, I'm glad you listened. Number one, but number two, that's what it really was, and it almost felt like, back when you got involved, right? It was you wanted to fight like the guy that beat up everybody in the UFC cage, right? And that's what you were looking to do. And we had people. I don't know how it was at Henzo's or David Adib's. But we had people coming in all the time wanting to, that Gracie Challenge was in Black Belt Magazine, and we had to, we didn't know when somebody was going to walk in and say, hey, I want to fight you. There's no way any of that stuff happens today.
I've seen a lot of challenge matches live in my time, David Adib and Henzo and even Hoyce. I've seen like some of them even at seminars. I got some very funny stories that I would never tell on the air. Save them for my book. But Enzo doing challenge matches and stuff. It was a crazy time that like you can't even really do justice when you're telling the stories to like the younger generation now. It was just different. I'm not saying it was better. I'm not saying it was worse. I'm not saying the way we did things back then was better. In fact, I think the way we do things now is probably better for a newer student.
I think going back to what you're saying, it is definitely better for a newer student because you can't even remember the amount of people that train for less than 3 months at any given time in the first 5 years you started jiu-jitsu. It has to be thousands of people quit just because it was too rough and too tough.
Absolutely. It was basically a young guy's art. I mean, I can't imagine somebody. I have a lot of, 40-plus guys in my academy. I can't imagine some of them making it through like where I trained, like in the beginning, like there just weren't systems in place, for like that older student to train. We like to say that jiu-jitsu's for everyone. Well, back then it wasn't. Like if you weren't in between 20 and 30, like you were just getting beat up.
Right, and if you weren't in between 20 and 30, and if you weren't willing or ready to fight when they said, hey, there's this guy coming upstairs, then it wasn't the place for you.
Exactly.
The crazy part is, and I'm assuming Henzo's was the same way, or David Adib's, at Maxercise, there was. You had 40, 50 guys in the, you know what I'm saying? Like it was a mass of humanity. They couldn't print money fast enough back in those days for these guys to be making it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I remember. And back then there was always idiots too. And the instructors like slowly they used to give us the wink, or I knew if you were told to like row with somebody, it was either their first day or they were an asshole, and like it was your job to like show them what jiu-jitsu was about, like to humble them. It was just a different time. That stuff really doesn't go on today.
Right, because the guys that come into your school aren't coming in skeptically, right? They're coming in knowing that this is 20 years of your experience behind this. Back then, it was these Brazilian guys saying, "Hey, screw you, we're going to kick your ass, and here's my gang to prove it."
It is if you could beat me, give you $100,000. No challenge.
That's a lot of money back then. A lot of money now.
Yeah.
So all right. So we kind of decided that it was definitely different. And I think you're right. It's not that it's better, not that it's worse, but it was necessary for us to get where we're at now.
My only hope is that the black belts that are coming up now are going to have like that same mental toughness as the people that came from the old school generation. Like I think a lot of them do. Like I see a lot of the competitors, that are competing now. They're tough, but are like the black belts of today, are they mentally tough because they're not going through the same things that we went through? So I think there's still some questions about. While I definitely think it's better because we are keeping people on the mat and actually helping them, start the journey and stay on the path of the jiu-jitsu journey. But at the upper belts and stuff, are they mentally prepared like we were to face some of the things that they're going to face, at those upper belts, so.
Right, but the way we're doing it now by having the ability to keep people longer, right? Back then, if the guy didn't have the toughness or the balls in the first 3 months, it wasn't happening. But we can help this guy or gal develop that where it's like, okay, you know what? they got to that. I got them past that sticking point, and now they can really develop that toughness and all that other stuff.
You can't help them if they're not in the room, you know.
Right. So you're probably, if not one of the most knowledgeable jiu-jitsu guys that I know. And when I say knowledgeable, from a technical standpoint, teaching standpoint, but also from the ability to look at a competitor, ability to look at a match, and ability to look at a referee or a series of matches. When you look at competitors nowadays, right, who do you see has that old school tough guy mentality from back when we came up, or the guys that we respect, from back in the day? Who are some of the competitors that you look at now and say, hey, this guy has an old school mentality? Oh, maybe he's got some new school techniques, but he's got some old school stuff going.
Definitely Justin Rader. He's a tough little dude. He's one of the guys that immediately come to my mind. I think Cobrinha is a lot tougher than people give him credit for. I think Cobrinha is probably one of the best jiu-jitsu competitors, of all time. And it's funny, most of the time when we talk about the best jiu-jitsu competitors of all time, it's always like Hodge or Jacare, you get but I really think Cobrinha is up there. I think because Cobrinha has lost a couple of matches to Mendez over the years. But if you look at all those matches except for one, there was one when Mendez took it to him.
Right, I think he arm locked him in that match.
Right. Every match was a referee's decision that you could have made an argument could have went either way. This guy could really have the most jiu-jitsu titles there is. He's a tough guy. Nobody ever breaks him.
Well, the Mendez brothers have done a decent job of really kind of developing this aura about them, and they've really, when you heard of it, these Mendez brothers, and they have this almost like other, they have fans. Back in the day, we weren't really fans. We appreciated guys, but there's Mendez brothers fans now, which is kind of amazing to me.
Yeah, they have a base kind of like that. I really haven't seen a lot of times through jiu-jitsu, the guys who have how Marcelo has the group of guys who he has just fans, and the Mendez brothers have them too. Eddie Bravo has a lot of them, that are just really all about them, think they don't do anything wrong, and these guys are great. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to,
of course,
the wrong way, but they do have a legion of fans like other people don't. And deservedly so. All of these people, but I find it almost strange at times. They won't watch anybody else but them. Right. Yeah,
they're Mendez heads.
Right.
They become fanboys.
In a derogatory way. It's just odd. They think the style that they do is just perfect, and they don't want to learn anything else. They don't want to hear about anything else. It's just they have that certain type of fan. It's crazy. But
so to
get back to
go ahead.
The question, Rader, Cobrinha, there's I don't know. There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys. But there's also guys that I think are kind of bullies. There's guys who beat everybody, and then that one guy who kind of takes it to them. They fall back a little bit. There are guys out there, but that are tough. All of these guys. The level now I think is higher than ever. So I don't want to say that any of these guys aren't tough, because they're all tough.
Right. They're better athletes. They're better trained, and they're better. Like Hickson said, right? And I'm assuming you've watched all of his interviews and stuff. They're becoming really smart at how to win at the sport.
They're training like trained athletes. I think you said it on another one of your podcasts. Guys now are training like athletes. They're training like the football players do. They're training like the college football players do. How to bet. That's how to be. They're training like professionals.
Right, and back when when you and I were in Brazil or whatever, and you're watching Mario Sperry win the Worlds, he was a pilot and a black belt and winning the Worlds. No way you could do that today.
No, absolutely not. I don't even think guys that are school owners now could win, because you're focused on different things. So it's kind of odd. I think Andre Galvao is amazing, and Rafael Lovato Jr. They're amazing that they're running high level programs and still competing on a high level. I could never do it. I'm being honest with you. I don't know, because your focus becomes your student, and not yourself. So like the fact that those two guys can have the type of students competing at the level that they are and competing at the level themselves, to me, is amazing. But I want to say one thing, just to get off track for 1 second. You were talking about like a lot of Rickson Gracie has been doing a lot of interviews now because he's promoting his his tournaments and stuff. But I want to say to the guys out there, I know you do it too. When you have an instructor who posts stuff like interviews with a guy like that, guys, if there's an interview with a guy out there from that generation like Rickson and Henzo and Hoyler Gracie, or even the Mario Sperry's of the world, Ricardo Liberio, these guys that are like Jean-Jacques Machado does it a lot too. These guys that are 5th and 6th degree black belts, if they have interviews and you guys aren't listening to them, you're an idiot, period, because the knowledge that these guys have is off the charts. Like I literally could learn something watching Rickson Gracie speak every interview. Like I've
listened to some of his interviews 3 and 4 times and take something new every time I listen to it. It's amazing.
So like if you're a new practitioner and you're not soaking up this guy's knowledge, you're a fool, period. Like I don't understand how everybody isn't like searching for this knowledge. And and I'm so grateful that we have like grandmasters of our art who are still like doing stuff like that, at least on the grandmaster level, that are giving interviews that we could listen to and still soak in their knowledge. They're still alive. Like,
right. Well, and the crazy part is to talk about old school. When we were coming up, the internet was, you had to dial up for the internet. You couldn't get there was no way we could do what we're doing right now. You up in North Jersey, me down in South Jersey. The access people have now today is amazing.
Yeah, we were watching VHS tapes that were transferred from the PAL versions in Brazil, like through squiggly lines. Like, thank God from Scotty from On the Mat, for making like videos for us and making the connections and almost getting killed a couple times doing it. Just to get us like some of the Mundial matches and and some of the connections that even like people like me had to make to get the stuff for all the people in the United States. It was crazy. The people now have it so much better, they have no idea. But guys, anyway, when you see a guy like Rickson or Jean-Jacques Machado or Henzo doing an interview, like, guys, don't miss these interviews. You could learn so much listening to these guys speak.
Now you're 100% right, because like you said, like, we're black belts. We've been training for 20 years, and I'm like a little kid when those guys talk. I'm like, all right, what's he going to say next? You know what I'm saying? What am I going to take away from this?
Yeah, absolutely. Rickson, just
yeah, the guy's on another level, man. Like I tell people I don't even really want to meet him because I just want to keep him where he's at,
Yeah, no, he's you won't be disappointed. I've met Rickson a couple times. He's a good dude.
So you said Raider, you said Cobrinha, right? So those are the current guys that you kind of really see have that old school mentality. Now, when you're talking to your students, right, and you're like, hey, you know what? You're not familiar with this guy, but you should watch this guy from back in the day or this other guy from back in the day. Like, if you had to give them a couple, not from so many generations ago, but guys that aren't active competitors now, but you say, hey, you may want to look at this guy because he understands what it's like to be a competitor, fighter, blah, blah, blah. Like, who are some of the people that you would recommend for, jiu-jitsu practitioners to watch and look at and emulate?
I still think, like, I like Salo. Salo, to me, actually transcends a couple of the different generations because he's constantly improving. Like, even now, like, he competes in the Masters, and you could learn so much from watching his setups. And he's throwing a lot more people than he used to. Like, I really enjoyed his match with Comprito at the Metamoris.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun. You're right. Yeah.
But it really depends. Like, there's certain guys, like, for certain games, like, Liazinho to me is still amazing. Like, I can watch Liazinho matches all day long.
He was new school before there was new school.
Right. And an old school guy who, like, that I still love to this day is Bibiano Fernandez. I used to love to watch that guy. Like, he was the Flash. He was just tremendous. But, I still believe that, I try to explain to, like, my new students, like, I would have Hoyler to my school sometimes, and I would try to tell them, listen, guys, he was Cobrinha before Cobrinha. Like, the guy didn't have a point scored on him for like 4 years, and this is when Abu Dhabi was every year, not every other year.
Right.
Like, there's still nobody to me that's been on a run like he had for that 3 or 4 years, where he won the Worlds every year and Abu Dhabi every year, the ADCC every year without getting a point scored on him. And, he was amazing. I would tell guys to, like, watch, like, a lot of his matches, but definitely Leozinho. Leozinho and Salo are two guys that I would definitely recommend, because their game would still be good today. Like, if you watch what they were doing back then, it still works now. Like, it's those two guys are pretty much two of my favorites.
Now, two guys that I really like, and I always tell people if you ever want to kind of check it out, and I'm going to see what your thoughts on are Jacare. He's fighting in the UFC now, and another guy that I think for a 2-year span might have been the most impressive gi jiu-jitsu guy going was Margarita. Where do you stand with either of those guys?
Think about Jacare. I think Jacare is such an unbelievable athlete that I think he's a very tough guy to tell people to watch, because I think a lot of people will never be able to do some of the things that he does, because he's literally, in my opinion, the most athletic jiu-jitsu guy there's ever been. Okay. So that's my guy. Like I don't really tell people to watch him that much, even though he's amazing. And there are some, I shouldn't say that because he actually does this one choke that I tell my guys to watch all the time. But he's a very hard guy to mimic. Like,
one of the big things that I like telling people to watch is watch his intensity and watch how he gets after it. And there's one point where he's has a match with the guy, right? The referee gets in his way, and he's not being a prick or anything, but he pushes the referee out of the way to get at his opponent. And I'm like, that's the guy you want at your school if he's a competitor. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. He had a drive and a focus that was unmatched. Margarita, to me, Margarita, you're dead on about Margarita too. And the thing I loved about Margarita, I think a very big part of training in the gi is getting a hand in a collar, especially in the beginning. It's going to learn it's going to teach you how to make a frame and like how to break people down and like do a lot of submissions. And there was nobody better in the collar. I mean, maybe Fabio Gigel. At getting in the collar. Margarito was a master, and like his open guard, tremendous competitor. And
what was amazing about him is he was submitting guys that had not been submitted in a long time, and winning matches, because there was that lull in jiu-jitsu competition where matches were starting to get won by points at the high level, and he's just like, screw this, I'm going to submit everybody when I can.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a student who, his nickname is Crazy. I don't want to say his name here, but he would always say the cross choke is crap, and like all the X choke is crap and stuff like that. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work on high level people. So literally, I would post Margarita's match with Fabio Gigel where he beat him. He actually, Fabio was like, I mean, there was a time when we were coming up. At one time, he was the best guy. Like,
for sure.
And you could show that the best guy getting tapped out by a simple, Helio Gracie choke, X choke, cross choke, whatever your school calls it. Like he finished him. And in fact, I think at one time he used to train under Fabio.
Yeah.
Who gave him the nickname Margarita?
It might have been. I'm not too familiar with what his kind of where his nickname came from. But yeah, he bounced around, and here's one of those guys that, and it's I don't think too typical for a guy that bounces around to be that successful. Most of the guys that you kind of, that you talked about, Salo or Fabio Gurgel or Cobrinha, were pretty kind of, I'm not going to say loyal because whatever, Margarita probably left for whatever his reasons were, but you see that development comes from most of the time sticking with one team.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, Margarita, like you said, for those 2 years, man, he was just, he was a beast. He was as good as probably has ever been. And he beat, like you said, some of the best guys there are. Submitted them. There's been some guys, over the years that have come and gone, like but Margarita, man, him and Holetta had those 2 years. There was a couple of guys who had like a couple just like 2 or 3 years where they were on top. Even Comprito, even though he was around for a long time, there was a period of 2 years where. He was winning the absolute as well.
Right, yeah, he won the absolute 2 years in a row. So, so we're talking about these high-level black belts, right? And and I made mention of kind of going through the belts with the same team and kind of, an instructor developing a student. And, we could argue back and forth, creonte, loyalty. At the end of the day, it's a two-way street, right?
I totally agree. Like, listen, I've always hated that word, the creonge word, because you don't know what the instructor did to the student. Like, sometimes there are guys out there that are pretty crappy instructors. And
that's an old school idea, though, right? I mean, no matter what, you got to eat shit and be happy, right?
Listen, there are people that deserve that term because, like, they've had instructors that have been very good to them and they left for selfish reasons or whatever, but, like you said, it's really a case-by-case basis. Like, I don't think you could generalize everybody that leaves a school as a creonge because, like, sometimes the instructor is just not a good dude. Like, what are you going to do if the instructor did something bad to you personally? So you're supposed to stay with that guy for the rest of your life? Like, me personally, I've had students that were jerks. I've thrown them out of my school. Like, so, like, what? They're a creonge because they might go somewhere else and get a belt? Like,
Right.
I just don't believe that. Like, there were some teams sometimes that you have to leave. Like, period. Like, and I don't judge anybody who leaves a school to go to another one. Now, if you get guys that are going to they've been in 4 or 5 schools, at some point maybe you need to look in the mirror and say, it's not everybody else, it's me.
Right, right. So I know our mutual friend Justin Garcia uses a good line. He's like, "You left your last school. When are you going to leave mine?" And I say that to a lot of people when they come into my school. It's just like, "Oh, I've been here, I've been there," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, I can understand maybe leaving one school, but now you're on your 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Like, what's going on here?"
I don't even take people from other schools anymore. If they've trained somewhere else and they hold, like, unless if they're a white belt or maybe an early blue belt, but like if somebody's an upper belt, I recently had a brown belt from another school come to my school, and he took my class and he loved it, and he was a pretty nice guy, and I flat out told him, listen, bro, if one of your goals is to be a black belt, like, you're not going to get it from me for, you're going to have to be with me for at least 3 years before I even think about it. So, like, I don't think my school is the school for you. You might be better off going somewhere else. And he actually appreciated the honesty. And
now, I'm assuming that would be different if a guy moves to your town from California or Oklahoma. You're not going to say, "Hey, you got to go back to your school back west."
Under somebody who's been a training partner of mine, like somebody like listen. Say you had a guy who one of your guys moved to my area. I can get on the phone with you and have a real serious conversation about the guy, and get like some good feedback about the guy. It's a little bit different. This guy came from a school that I didn't really know the instructor to have like that conversation with him. He wasn't part of like my inner circle, so to speak, where I can get like a good read on the guy or somebody that I trust. Like,
so what your students should be taking away from this when they watch this is that, like, as much as that guy could have been paying you money, it's more important to you that you keep the school that you want to keep as opposed to making a couple extra bucks just because you got this new brown belt at your school.
Yeah, we've created a pretty good culture by me that I'm very proud of, and I'm not going to let anybody, not that this guy was doing that because he wasn't. For me, the black belt, you're connected with that person for life. So so like it's I'm just we don't give them out easily. Like it's I really have to know that person. Like you and I talked before about like how we come from a time where we used to eat up like interviews with like Hickson, like back in the day, a lot of the guys now don't get to see like interviews or conversations with Grandmaster Elio, and like I remember him talking about that, where he would talk about if a guy fools me after 5 years, it's I don't remember the exact saying, but like if he it took a long time to get a black belt from him, and he really knew the person inside and out. Like he said, the person's not going to fool him in 10 years. They might fool him in 2 or 3.
Right.
So that always stuck with me.
That leads to kind of the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And it's almost the opposite of what you're talking about. Is like the old school mentality was what, man, you earn your belt. I think half school you keep your belt at the school. You don't even get to take it home, or at least it was like that at one point. Yeah. So that's almost old school to an ultimate level. But now you can say that there's some schools out there that are giving the belts away. Black belt, brown belt, purple, blue, but now what do you think that's doing? Number one, for our sport and art, and number two, for that school and student.
Well, as far as the sport goes, like, listen, those people are going to be exposed in the sport, you know. But as far as the art goes, it's just bad for the art. And you know, there's so many things that that a black belt should be. Like, you know, it's not just about being like a great competitor, being great on the mat. Like, what type of person are they? Are they giving back to their school? Are they giving back to the art of jiu-jitsu? Like, you know, are they gonna be a good representative of the art? I mean, we could go on and on. There's so many different things that like a black belt should be. And I think there's like some guys that aren't really representing our art well. They're giving out belts. First of all, like, listen, you have to be a second-degree black belt to even give a black belt, and there's people now that are giving them that aren't that.
Right.
We have those rules in place for a reason, okay? And there's people now that have very small schools that are giving belts to their friends, maybe so they can teach, or, you know, they might look at this guy, oh, this guy's really good. Like, you know, especially like younger guys, like, are they mature enough to wear that black belt? Like, you know, I look back now when I was a brown belt, and like sometimes I would even think in my head, like, you know, I was questioning like some of my instructors, like, man, you know, like, what's going on here? But you know, now as I get older and I'm deeper into my black belt, like, man, I get it. Like, I get what these guys were doing and why they were holding us back and what they were, you know, it wasn't about, like, so many people think the Gracies were just trying to keep control of stuff, and maybe they were, but maybe there was a good reason why they were doing it. Like, you know, now I could look and say that I think they were right. You know, where
and we chatted about this before. Like, I used to have such a chip on my shoulder about how I thought Horian did things with this art that I loved. You know, meanwhile, it's his last name, but I was like, man, well, why doesn't he do this? Why does he do that? And now looking back on it, man, I should write him a letter and apologize for all the times I cursed him behind his back, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Like, you know, like we thought it was a control thing, and, you know, in the control, I think was the right thing, because I think they foresaw like a lot of the things that are happening now, you know, and like losing control of the great art. And they didn't want it to be, and I'm not saying this in a bad way about like the taekwondos or the karates. They didn't want a lot of the same things that befell like those arts to happen to ours.
But look, man, you're not talking crap on that stuff. But you talk to a karate guy from 30 years ago, 40, an old school karate guy. They used to fuck each other up. They weren't, you know, say maybe okay, jiu-jitsu might still technically be better.
Now, like you're saying, you talk to some of those old school karate guys, especially on the Chinese end. Like, they'll talk about how it took them 15 years to get a black belt. You know, it wasn't like it is now. Guys getting it in like 2 or 3 years.
Right, and kids getting black belts. It's ridiculous.
I absolutely agree. Like, you know, to me, call it a kid's belt. Like, if you want to have like a grading system for kids that ends, call it a junior black belt or whatever you want to call it. But like, listen, at the end of the day, a kid's 12 years old to a black belt. I don't care what he knows or how high he can kick. I'll pick him up and throw him across.
So we can both agree that that there needs to be a high standard when it comes to the important belts: blue, purple, brown, black.
There should be. Listen, I tell my students when they get a purple belt from me, it's a really big belt at my school, and I think a lot of the schools that came, you know, directly from the Gracies, it's a very big belt, and like, I expect you. If I put a purple belt on you, you know what I think of you, and you know that I expect you at some time to become black belt. And like, now, even the purple belt, I'm starting to see people get purple belts who quit in a couple of months. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're a purple belt,
I can't understand that, because the generation that we came up with, like, we're the old guys, but the music was better back when. But when you saw a purple belt, right, you're like, wow, this guy. It was like seeing a black belt when I saw a purple belt. You know, just because
generation doesn't understand. When you and I were coming up, you could name all the purple belts in the United States. There weren't a lot of them. I think that's why we hold it in such high regard.
Right. All right. So what do you think needs to be done then? You know, if these guys are being too loose with the belts, then how do we either rein them in or invalidate what they're doing?
I think it starts with us as instructors. We need to teach our guys, not just jiu-jitsu, but the people that we know want to be an instructor or, you know, are instructing for us, like, what it takes like to get belts. Teach them how to give belts. Like I actually do have these conversations with a lot of my students, and I'm grateful when they ask or pick my brain. I'm not insulted like, why'd you give this guy this belt? I want to teach them. Excuse me. I want to teach them like what's going through my mind when I give a belt, why I gave this person a belt, why I didn't give this person a belt, why I think this person needs more time. You got to teach guys how to rank, you know, because it's not just about those one things. Age comes into play. Like, age comes into play. You know, are they getting the most out of their ability? Like, listen, you're going to get some non-athletic dudes join your school. Do they never get a black belt? Well, yes and no. Like, you know, am I getting the absolute best out of this guy that he has to offer? Is he working hard? Is he doing all of these things that that I believe a black belt should be? Does he, you know, like I can't, you know, think of the right phrase. But, you know, and there's other people that like they might be the best competitor on the map, but they're just a jerk and they're doing like so many things. And you know what? I will keep that person back a little while until they mature.
Right.
But, you know, but I believe that, you know, as instructors, we need to teach our guys the future of our, you know, like of your school, of my school, of like our, you know, whatever association we're with. We need to teach these guys how to give rank and like what we feel about these ranks, so they're not giving it to their friend who, like, you know, who left the school or you know, oh, this guy's in limbo, so I'm going to give him a belt. Like, you know, he deserves it. You know what? Maybe there's a reason why. Like, you know who's a great guy to listen to about this stuff? Fabio Santos really has this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I listened to one interview he did with Salo. It was amazing. I learned something about Philadelphia. Like, he almost moved to Philadelphia. I didn't even realize that. You know, but look, I think a lot of this comes from, and just using an example, like, I operate under the idea if one day every single Gracie were poisoned and died, right? Who's left to be stewards of the sport, right? Well, man, we're the guys. We're the people that have to kind of push it forward. You know, we're that generation, and we have to bring the stuff that they brought us, right? All the good stuff, even some of the bad, add what we got to it. But the belts are ultimately the things that we can't compromise on. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you know, and you're operating like you're a steward or a conservator of the art and of the sport, then that's when the belt becomes important.
I agree, and you know, it's very important for us to have that passion about it. You know, and this isn't me like saying, oh, like, you know, if you didn't get a belt from me, you don't really deserve it and stuff. Like, listen, like, you know, I'm very passionate about that. Like, you know, this art and like the people who taught me it. Like, I want to preserve what they've built. You know, and I don't think everybody has that. That passion that like you or I would have, or some of the guys that we came up with, or the guys that we know from even the tournament scene who aren't on the same team with us, but we have the same beliefs. You know, we want to preserve this art. You know, and if you're like a new guy or a young guy, you know, and you might not be mature enough to be giving some of the belts you get. Like, and I'm not saying this to talk crap about anybody, but if you're a guy out there and you own a school and you have about 15 students, maybe you're not qualified to be giving out black belts because you have nothing in your room to compare what a black belt is to.
Right.
You know, because they could win a tournament doesn't mean that they're a black belt. Like, you know, so you guys need to understand these things. Like, you know, there's a lot more that goes into it. You know, and please, like, do your research, read your books, watch videos of the grandmaster. Like, you know, do what you're supposed to be doing. You never stop learning. Like, if you're a black belt, you get that the beginning of your journey starts at black belt, you know, and if you haven't figured that out yet, you know, maybe you need to like start like doing some more research.
Well, you know, it's funny because, you know, when you want to get your black belt, you're like, man, I want it, and then you get it, and you're like, fuck, this is like a whole new level of responsibility now. People look at you differently, and your expectation, you know, and I heard this was told to me before. I was like, man, you know, no matter what, right? Even these guys that are at these crappy schools that these guys are giving away belts. Look, man, when you walk in, if that guy walks into a legit school, he's going to get exposed. So no matter what, you got to live up to that belt. Take your ass kicking and move on, and you go to a school that's legit and you say, hey, man, I got this promotion. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but I want to live into this black belt. I want to become the black belt that I know I can be. Maybe I didn't deserve it, but I got it. We can't go backwards, right? And everybody has the ability to do that, right? And no matter what, you're at a school long enough, you'll know it's a BS school. And if you're a purple or brown or whatever, it happens all the time. It happens to you. You got guys come in and somebody would turn to me, hey, Marco, would you give this guy a blue belt, or would you have given him a brown belt or a purple? Like, no, he wouldn't have got it here. But you know what? He'll work up to it. He'll get that good here. Yeah, you know, that kind of thing. But I digress.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's tough when you're as passionate as we are about like these things and about the art. Like, look, man, I love jiu-jitsu. You know, I love MMA too, but I love jiu-jitsu. I'm much more passionate about jiu-jitsu than I am about MMA. You know, so like I want to preserve the art. I want this art. I don't want this art to have the same problems as some of the other arts have had. Like, you know, it's even funny. I know I'm not one of the guys, like a lot of guys disagree with me, you know, and that's good. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I don't even want jiu-jitsu to get into the Olympics because I see what it did to judo, and like I don't want some of the same things.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like what purpose would it serve? You know, I don't see the purpose that it would serve. Nobody would watch it. They don't watch it now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Right, people find it boring now. They're still going to find it boring. But, like, you know, they created a whole bunch of rules in judo that, like, if you talk to the real judo practitioners, that they think ruined their sport. You know, so why do I want that to happen to ours? Like, I would love to see some of my friends that still compete win a gold medal in the Olympics. That'd be great. But, like, as for the art's sake, for the sake of the art, you know, it's not something that, like, you know, I'm not on that train. Like, you know, like, I just think they'll do more harm than good once the politics get into it. Because I don't even believe that even the organizations that are out there now, some of the things that they've done, I don't think have been good for the art. So, like, you know, that's where I stand on that, you know. So.
All right. Well, Sav, I think we could probably eat up my whole hard drive with all the topics that we could talk about. I appreciate you being on. Number one, I'm thankful that you took the time. Number two, I'm really happy that your health is coming back. Number three, your students should be happy that you're this passionate, even coming off of your you know, your surgery and all that other stuff. Anything coming up at your school or any events that you like to let the public know about?
You know what? I'm having a Rafael Lovato seminar on March 3rd or February. I don't even know, bro.
All right. Well, you can send me. This will be out next week. Send me the link. I'll put all the info if anybody wants to come check out Rafael Lovato. Sav, any parting shots for the fans?
You know, again, I just want to thank everybody again for all the messages I got from all over the country. Like, you know, I can't begin to tell you when you're going through something like I went through, like what that meant to me. It really meant a lot. You know, there were days that, like, you know, you just can't sleep. That I remember one night my girlfriend was actually reading me all the PMs I got, even on Facebook, and all my text messages and stuff. And you know, it was really, really heartfelt. You know, thanks guys, and you know, thanks Marco for having me on. I always enjoy like talking to you and like some of the guys from our generation. You know, it's funny you're doing this now for the world to see, but we've been having conversations like this on the phone for years.
Yeah. Now they get to peek into what black belts talk to each other about.
Justin, Dave Jacobs, Rob Kahn. I talk to you guys all the time, like with conversations like this. So, you know, but peace, guys. Thanks for having me, Marco. It was my honor to be on your podcast.
Thanks, Professor Chris Savarese. All right, thank you, sir.
Take care, buddy.